Hey folks, this is Rob Wells here with you from the law office of Robert M. Wells. Our office helps out landlords and property managers deal with their landlord-tenant situations and problems. In this video, we're going to talk about buyer beware. Landlords, future property managers, if you are buying a property with tenants or someone in possession of the property, what you should be on the lookout for, what type of questions you should be asking, and how you can do to protect yourself so you don't get burned inside the transaction. Before we begin, landlords, property managers, if you're considering buying property with tenants or occupants in possession, or you're dealing with a landlord-tenant situation, please feel free to reach out to us below. Now let's begin. So I've seen a couple of different articles lately. Particularly, these are like owners in California. They listed their house for sale. Maybe the house is worth like $1.5 million, couple $1 million, right? And lo and behold, the buyers of that property, they purchase the property expecting that, hey, tenants or occupants are going to move out, but then they don't, and then it becomes a horror story. And I've seen a couple of these newsreels lately on this issue. And it kind of got me thinking, you know what? This is probably going on statewide. You got buyers. I know it's a really hard real estate market right now. Inventory's low. You can put it in like a gazillion different offers, and you might get a property, hey, which is great, but it's occupied by a tenant or some occupant. And you gotta have to be a little bit careful about that, because you could be buying more than what you can chew, basically, and then it ends up turning into a horror story where you're in eviction court for 6 months, a year, depending on the place where you're at. So I'm just going to give you a couple of tips and things that I would probably do if you're in that situation. Number one, my number one tip is you got to know the locale of where you're purchasing the property. That's key, especially in California, because in many places across the state, your city or county may have a local eviction moratorium or ordinance, basically limiting when and how an owner of a piece of real property can evict a tenant or terminate their tenancy. I think in this story here, they might have been in a county where there's a temporary moratorium on evictions, and right now I know there's a couple of different places, particularly Alameda County, LA. I think San Diego I heard in the news, expanded no fault evictions, meaning if the tenant didn't do something wrong, you can't evict them. And you got to kind of know like what market you're in, basically, because if you're in one of those counties and you think, hey, someone's listed the property for sale, it's maybe a little bit under market, but there's occupants inside, there might be a reason why that price may be the way it is. It's the hassle factor of dealing with the tenant or occupant. The second thing you need to know is if it's an actual like tenancy, like the seller, is the landlord now, and you're going to step into the shoes of that landlord being the buyer of this property, you kind of need to ask some questions to the seller, at least in my opinion, my 50 cents worth it. You kind of want to know if there's any problems with that tenancy, such as, you want to know the payment history of the tenants, how much the rent is. Can I see the lease documents? I need to know what type of lease it is, because once you buy the property from the seller, you step into the shoes of that seller, at least for that landlord tenancy, so to speak. So you kind of want to be advised of any issues that you may have with the tenancy if you're looking at purchasing the property with an occupant or tenant inside as well. You're going to also want to know, like, at least from your realtor's perspective, for yourself as well too, am I being compensated, or am I getting a discount for taking the tenants that are in possession, so to speak? So sometimes in this real estate market, hey, people are overbidding stuff, and I just caution you all that if you're purchasing a property that has tenants inside, that the price is being adjusted for that, or the seller, by the time escrow closes, is going to have the tenants removed and so forth like that. So you kind of need to know that going in, because if you overpay, for example, and, the contract says, hey, buyer's taking subject to tenants' rights. Well, guess what? You're taking subject to tenants' rights, and you got to follow and comply with the law, basically. So you got to know like what the details of the deal are, and you need to ask for information from the seller about the tenancy, any type of lease violations, non-payment of rent. Let me see the ledger. Let me just look at the docs. What you may have. You may be surprised that the seller has no docs. So you kind of step in the shoes of that, and you want to know that up front. So those are kind of my tips about dealing with that type of situation. And my number one rule, I tell this to everyone in general: if you're always in a hurry, you typically will make mistakes there. So Rob's advice is, don't get married to a home. I know, it might be the dream home and so forth like that, but it could be a nightmare if you rush into it and you don't know what's going on. You're in a place that has eviction control. The tenant owns the property, and you're just kind of like making the payments for the tenant. You kind of want to know that up front. So, again, landlords, property managers, if you're looking at buying property with a tenant or occupant in possession, and you need help with that, and you're within our area that we help landlords in Solano, Napa, and Contra Costa counties and the surrounding areas, please feel free to reach out to us below. Until next time, we'll talk to you then. Take care. Bye-bye.